Hello, my friends. Hope you're doing well. I just thought I'd do a quick hack, a pod hack. I'm going to call these hashtag pod hacks because I think that sounds cool and trendy. But I'm going to show you a bit of a hack on how to make the most from your Zoom recordings and your Zoom calls. Now, I don't know about you, but me as a podcaster, I love doing stuff face-to-face and one-to-one. I just like meeting people. I think you get a better quality of recording when you're face-to-face with somebody, when you can look into the whites of their eyes, when you can feel the energy in the room. But ultimately, it's not always feasible. It's not always possible. Zoom and remote recording facilities now allows us to do recordings around the world. It allows us to do recordings in different time zones. It allows us to connect with people much more easily. Now, don't get me wrong. I've been to Miami last year to do 3 podcast recordings on the bounce, face-to-face and in person. And I got a lot of benefit from doing that. I got the auxiliary marketing. I got, micro and macro content that I made when I was out there. I got these sort of like cool little YouTube videos that I could create when I was out there. But again, it's not always feasible from a budgetary or a time standpoint to travel around the world to do these podcasts. So Zoom is a great option for being able to remotely record with your guests. And I know some of the podcast purists be going, well, don't use Zoom because it's not high fidelity audio. And I understand that, but Zoom is brilliant because everybody understands how to use Zoom. Everyone in the flipping world, your mum's using Zoom, your nan's using Zoom, your auntie's using Zoom. Everybody understands how to use Zoom. And because it has got such massive adoption, the barrier to entry is really, really low. So, for example, with the podcast purists out there, yes, you might use Zencast or Squadcast or Riverside FM or one of these other great platforms that records in much higher quality. But in a lot of cases, and don't get me wrong, if you're using them, great, the quality of the audio is much better. But I understand the majority of people are using Zoom because it's easy for you as the podcast host and it's easy for your guest as the interviewee because they understand how to use it. So here's a top hack on how to make the most from your Zoom calls and recordings. So at the moment, what I'm hearing a lot on podcasts is that people are recording the audio in one single file. So what do I mean? So me as the interviewer, let's say in this instance, and you as the interviewee in this instance, is being recorded in the same file. So for example, there's background noise my end while you're talking, you will hear it on the recording, obviously. Now, I have got a 3.5-year-old son. He loves to run into the office unannounced, scream and shout and talk about the latest Thomas train that he's been playing with. So if, for example, and he doesn't care about interviews, he doesn't care about celebrity influencers. He couldn't give 2 shits, quite frankly. He just likes to shout about Thomas as loudly as he can. And if he's going to do that in the middle of a recording, he doesn't really flipping care. So if I'm recording in 2 separate files, if my guest is talking, my son comes in screaming and shouting, and ultimately, I can edit that out in the post-production and they don't hear that on the recording. But again, what I'm hearing most people doing at the moment is that the Zoom call is just recorded in a single file. So let me show you how to record in 2 separate files first and foremost. Let me share my screen with you guys. So here we are. You can now see my Zoom back end. Oi, oi. Click on Zoom US. That was it. That was immature. I don't care. Click Preferences. And if you go down to Recordings, now, I've already got it ticked, but you guys don't need to. You probably won't have it ticked, but click this button here. So record a separate audio file for each participant. So effectively, this is telling Zoom, record me one side and record the guest another side. And also, by the way, just so you know, if you've got multiple guests, it will record each individual person. So let's say you're doing like a round table or you're doing like so you've got some, 3 or 4 guest experts on. Each individual person is being recorded separately. So let's say that you've got someone who's talking and somebody else has got loads of background noise happening. You in the post-production edit, you can edit that noise out. So for example, at the moment, I've got builders around the corner who are smashing up somebody's loft and it sounds like they are just hammering this house all day long. So if you pick up that audio in my recording, if my guest is talking, if they make a loud noise or they smash something or they turn a disc cutter on, which they did just a minute ago when I was doing a previous recording, which I had to flip and restart it, then I can edit that out in the post-production, if that makes sense. So you click that button, it will record as 2 separate files. Now, if I go onto my folders here, so these are my folders. If I scroll down and go to Documents, it saves it into Zoom. So I did this recently with a guy called Gavin Preston. I had Gavin on the show. Audio recording. So audio recording here, if I click onto this, you can see that it says audio only, bit of code, and there's James Burt. So that's recording of my side. And that one there with Gavin Preston, that's Gavin's recording. So both of these are saved in M4A format. Now, the Audacity, I'm just going to show you this quickly. Audacity doesn't like M4A formats. So if, for example, you've ever done this before, if you've been using Audacity and think, oh, great, I can utilize I can edit the audio after. and you drag and drop an M4A, you're going to get this message which says, this is an advanced audio coding file and we don't recognize it. So effectively, you have to turn it into a file format, easy for me to say, put your teeth back in, a file format that is supported, such as a WAV or an AIFF file or an MP3. So what you guys need to do is go, and there's a lot of information here, guys, but hopefully it's useful for you. Go and get something like this, like a music converter. It's free on the App Store. It's brilliant. Don't have to pay for it. And all you literally do is just drag that M4A and you drag it into your music converter, which will turn into an MP3. I'm not going to do that right now because it's going to take ages. So that's basically what you do. And then when you've got your MP3s, you can drag those into Audacity like this. This is going to take ages. So here's one, as they say in the words of Blue Peter. Here's one I've done earlier, even though now it's not going to work. Here's one I've done earlier. Right, so this is, get there in the end. This is the file of me and Gavin Preston. So this on the top is me, and this on the bottom is Gavin. So you can see here by the waveforms that this is a section where I'm talking. He's not really talking that much. Then he talks, I'm not talking that much. But again, you can see there, these little dots here, there's a bit of background noise there. So if I wanted to, I could potentially make them silent. So I'm going to play you a little bit of the audio so you can hear what I'm talking about. So this is going to be me talking and Gavin being quiet. If that worked out. I might sort of bring it up a few times. It's not just to make you, to aid you unnecessarily, but do you know why? At the moment, there's so many, quote unquote, experts. So many... There you go. So that's the recording of me, and there you can see Gavin there. So for example, if I didn't want Gavin's laugh here, which you can hear, that's a great laugh as well, isn't it? But if I didn't want that in the recording, I could literally highlight that section, go to select, generate silence, and I can make him silent. So now... Yeah, 100%. I might sort of bring it up a few times. It's not just to make you, to aid you unnecessarily, but do you know why? See, now it's not there. So if I go undo, it's now there again. To aid you unnecessarily, but so then the other thing that you could do, for example, if there's a whole section that you don't want to, say if you're like doing a bit of chit chat with your guest before you get started, but you don't want to include that within the show, obviously at the moment it would be in two files. So here's what you do, and here's the trick, because you need to do the same thing to both files or else it becomes out of sync. So let's say this is the beginning for all intents and purposes, this is the beginning of the podcast. Yeah, 100%. So that's where I want it to start from, for example, okay? So if I said, right, I don't want to include any of this previous audio, I'd highlight this section here, but then I press Command up and K, and it's not worked. Command up and K, there you go. And you can see it's highlighted it on both stereo files. So now anything that I do will be done to both files. So if I want to delete this whole section, it's now got rid of the whole thing. But the audio of me and the audio of Gavin is still in sync, if that makes sense. So let me just walk you through that one more time. So if, for example, if I want to get rid of this bit of audio from me and I press delete, now obviously, as you can see when it does it, now it's out of sync with Gavin's audio. So obviously I don't want to do that. So if I go back, but if I wanted to do that, if I do it to both files by pressing Command up or Command Shift and K, anything I now do does it to both files. So there you go. So I don't want to sort of like blow your minds too much or give you too much information that you can't practically use it. But essentially, if you record your audio file on Zoom as each participant, you could do more stuff in post-production. So for example, as I say, there's background noise from me while Gavin's talking in this podcast, I can silence myself. If there's background noise while I'm talking from Gavin's side, I can silence that. And don't be afraid, like that might look a little bit complicated if you've not done too much stuff with Audacity before. And by the way, Audacity is so simple to use. You can literally learn it in 60 minutes from a free YouTube tutorial. I'm going to put a tutorial out actually. So I'll send you guys to that after. But it's dead easy to do and it can make your podcast sound so much better. I hope that is useful and there'll be more pod hacks. So if you like this video, please give it a little thumbs up or a like or wherever you're watching it, or leave us a comment below and I'll make sure that I'll be doing more of these pod hacks to help you improve your podcast.